So today I'm going to be telling you the story of my 1992 Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Now, this had to be in between 2010 and 2011. I had my first car lot, and at the time I was driving a 1995 F-150. It was a really nice truck, different story for a different time. But I was cruising around the Mannheim auction list, and I saw this 1992 Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe in the dead lane. I have always had a thing for Thunderbirds. I learned how to drive in a 1990 Thunderbird V6 that my sister drove. So I always had a thing for these cars, and I'd always wanted a Super Coupe. And this one looked to be in bad enough shape that I could actually afford it that time. So I went up to Mannheim, I took a look at it, and honestly the thing was a basket case. It needed body work, it needed paint work. The interior was in really good shape, but again, it was in the dead and disabled lane, so we didn't know if it ran, didn't know anything about it. Now, at this point in my mechanical career, I was a pretty good, diagnostician, and I was a pretty good part changer, but I had never really done anything with the restoration part of it, the full-blown ground-up rebuild. But, I like a challenge anyway, so I started looking at the car, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna bid on this thing. And it went through, and I was bidding on it. I think it went for like $1,000. It was dirt cheap. And I came up with the winning bid on it. So Mannheim has this little dude in a golf cart that takes you out to the dead and disabled. And I had my trailer with me. And he's like, look, you can't drive this thing out of here. I was like, well, why not? He said, because it's spewing gasoline everywhere when you try to turn on the thing. All right, so let me take a look at it. I'll see if I can figure out what's wrong with it. So I go over there, pop the hood on it, open the hood up, and the fuel line going to the fuel rail was just dangling there. I was like, well, dude, there's the reason why it's spewing gas everywhere. Snapped it back in, key on, no gasoline. He's like, okay, cool, you can drive it out of here. Start it up. Well, that ain't good. It was playing, I hear you knocking, but you can't come in. A rod bearing had gone on it. I was like, okay. No big deal. Put it up on the trailer, got it back, ripped the engine out of it. Sure enough, spun rod bearing. But I did find a bunch of performance parts on it. It had headers on it. It had head studs on it. It had main studs on it. It was a well-built motor. Had the underdrive pulley for extra boost. Whole nine. So I think, cool. So I go through. I put a new crankshaft in it. Get a couple of used rods for it. Resize everything. Get everything back together. Crank it up. Runs great. Take it down the road, first gear, down to second gear, third gear. Well, that ain't good. Fourth gear, that ain't good at all. So the synchronizers are shot on this car. It's like, this is starting to turn into a nightmare. So I'd never rebuilt a transmission before in my life, but I thought, hey, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. So I get online, I find a rebuild kit for it, and this Mazda build, it's like an M5 R2 RKE. It's basically the same transmission that's in my 92 F-150. It's a truck transmission, because the car's so big and makes so much torque, they didn't really have a quality transmission, so they put a truck unit in. I was okay, and take the transmission apart on it, and I've got this jig set up with a PVC pipe, and every time I take something off, I put it on there. I'm taking pictures, making sure everything's right. Well, I get my rebuild kit in the mail, and it had compartments in there, but the mail had shook it up, so synchronizers were everywhere. The parts were all mixed together, and not a single one of them was labeled. So basically I'm comparing them and everything, and I'm slowly putting this engine back together, or this transmission back together. I think, all right, I've got it back together. Slap the transmission back in, go down the road, and second gear is really hard to get into, and third gear is really easy to the point that it's grinding. And I go back and I take a look at it, and second and third gear synchros are very, very similar, but they're not quite the same, and I got them backwards. Crap. It's like, you know what? I can live with it. The second gear will loosen up, and the third gear doesn't grind that bad. You can just kind of feel it when it catches. It's like, whatever. So now I'll move on to the paint and body work. Now, I am not a body man by any stretch of the imagination, but I knew one. So this guy, he takes care of the body work for me, gets all that done on it, and I'm going to do the paint work on it. So I get it in the garage, and it's wintertime like it is now. And I've got it sanded and everything. And I get the genius idea that I'm going to turn on my wood-burning stove that I've got in the garage, and now I'm going to spray paint fumes. And it's a miracle I did not blow myself up. I was an idiot back then. It is an absolute miracle I didn't blow myself up. And now I realize, oh God, I've got flammable fumes everywhere in an open flame. So I shut all that down real quick. And the paint job came out okay, except for the fact that I had ash in the air and the ash bound to it and it went on the paint. It made for an interesting effect, but you know, it was like whatever, however this goes. And I had painted the car Sonic Blue because it was a Ford color that I liked on the Mustangs, but it was never offered on the Thunderbird, and it came out looking great. I mean, it had trash in the paint, all that. It was a first-time paint job, but it really did come out looking great. So now I've got the car, I've rebuilt the engine, I've rebuilt the transmission, I've painted the car, and now I'm driving it on the road. And I'm driving this thing, I've got about, I'd say, maybe 1,000 miles on it. And I come out of a Domino's parking lot and I jump on it. And let me tell you something about that 3.8 supercharged. It revs like that. And it only has like a 4,500 red line. Well, when I came out of Domino's, I hit a slick spot on the road, and that engine instantly went from 2,000 RPM right on up to 7,000 RPM. It's just banging off the rev limiter. Just pop, 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 pop. Crap! Getting home, and I hear knock, 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 knock. Oh, son of a gun. So I pulled the push rods out of it, think I bent a push rod. Didn't bend a push rod. So I think, okay, I collapsed the lifter, changed the lifters, didn't collapse the lifter. So I'm like, crap, I trashed the bottom end on this thing. Take the engine out of it, get my rod bearings, put them back in, nothing really looks bad, get it all back together, start it up, tap, 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 tap. My head about explodes at this point. I said, you know what, screw this, I'm going to get rid of this engine, I'm going to go to a junkyard and get another one. So I find a junkyard. He's got an engine for it, I slap the engine into it, start it up, and this thing vibrates like nothing you have ever seen. The entire car is about to shake itself apart. I mean, you give it the gas and it just... It's like, what is going on here? And again, I go through it, I check through absolutely everything. Cannot find it. I said, you know what? I am done with this car. It has defeated me. So I put it up for sale on Craigslist at the time, and these people come out and they buy it. I tell them, look, this car's got problems. I don't know what's wrong with it. I've tried everything. I can't figure it out. The only thing I can think of is in 1989 or 90, when this Super Coupe came out, they had an external balance, and then in the later years they became an internal balance. The only thing I can think of is I've got an internal balance engine on an external balance flywheel. Only thing I can think of that's wrong with it, because I've already changed the harmonic balancer and it did not help. They say, fine, we got it. Story's over, right? I'd say about a month later, I get a call. Dallas County impound. Huh. Yeah, is this Jason? Yeah. Yeah, we got your car in the impound lot. Do you want it? Like, dude, I sold that car a long time ago, and no, I don't want it. Like, okay, well, we found it on the side of the road where if you don't want to buy it back for, you know, like $1,000 in impound fees or something, they said, if you don't want it back, they said, we'll just auction it off. I said, yeah, you go ahead and do that. I don't really care about it. They said, okay, cool. So I put it out of my mind, and then about 6 months later, somebody that knows me is like, dude, did you get rid of your T-Bird? I'm like, yeah. He's like, man, a junkyard up in way up north of Dallas. It was up by Denton, I think. He's like, dude, they have this car sitting out there. He says, I know it's yours because it's that bright blue, and no Ford ever came with that bright blue color on it. I was like, yeah, that's mine. He's like, I'm going to go look at it. He said, because they're selling it whole. I'm like, yeah, man, it vibrates bad. 2 days later, he calls me back. He's like, yeah, man. He said, I don't know what's wrong with that thing. He said, but you ain't lying about it vibrating. I'm like, yeah, man, it was bad. He's like, no, I didn't get it. So that was the last I heard of the car. I'm assuming the junkyard either sold it or they got rid of it, but I haven't seen it before. But if you're ever driving around and you see a bright Atlantic blue 1992 Ford Thunderbird, think of me because it's probably mine. So yeah, that's been my story. As always, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you enjoy these videos and you want to see more. If you have a car story, drop a comment down below because I'd love to hear it.